プラズマプロダクションプレゼンツプラズマバースポッドキャスト。
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the PlasmaVerse Podcast. Here with me, it's none other than Mark Todd Osborne. How's it going, Mark?
Hey, it's going good.
Great.
I've been busy. That's all I can ask for.
And
Be
again,
busy.
good morning. Even because there in LA, it's morning. Here in Italy, it's around 5 p.m. So it's great to have also those different moments of the day, and if talking about all those things we're going to talk about these different moments and live the day. So Mark, I'm literally reading tons of great things about your career and how you started from your website and all the great movies you worked on, and it's great talking to people like you, because I literally can see all the movies that I actually saw during the years that you graded, and was like, oh my god, he did this, and that's great. And I want to ask you at first how you started. It was always passion for color grading, or you had like a moment where I don't know, you was with the camera in your hand, or started as a filmmaker. I don't know. Tell us more.
Yeah, my path is a little unique. I like a lot of us. I grew up watching cinema, and fell in love with cinema early on. My mom used to sometimes take me out of school to go to the movies, and I would always love that. I'm a little older than you, so I grew up watching the early Spielberg movies of the Raiders of the Lost Arks and the Jaws and Close Encounters. So I really fell in love with Spielberg. Was my first director I started to really pay attention to, and of course George Lucas with Star Wars. So that already put the bug in my head about just loving cinematography. I didn't know how to articulate it. I knew that I loved images. And I'm sitting there doing a 2-3-5 as I'm talking. I talk with my hands, yeah. So I love cinematic images, and always knew that I'd want to do something creative. Just didn't know where I wanted. And as I got older, into my later teens, I knew that I wanted to direct at the time. So, I started trying to do some local film schools, and I made short films. But then I got really aggressive and just started going right to the directors themselves. I remember when I was 19 years old or so, I went up to Wes Craven, who directed, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, lots of movies. I went right up to him at a screening one time and just said, "Hey, I want to work in this business. Can you help me out?" And he said, "Come to my office." And so that summer, I was at his office 2 or 3 times, and he just told me stories about making all the Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left and the movies he made. And I just started meeting people, and I actually ended up getting out of college pretty early. I didn't finish it because I realized I just wanted to start working in the movie business, and met the editor of Field of Dreams, and he's the one that said, if you want to learn how to direct, you should learn editing, because that's where the story is told. And that's what I clung to, and I begged New Line Cinema at the time. Again, that was their biggest movie was the series of Freddy Krueger movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I sort of begged them to work for them, and they let me in, and I became an apprentice editor for a very short time. But I stayed in post, and I ended up learning later at a post house, when I was just like a vault employee and then became a tape operator. I learned what the colorist did. I didn't even know that job existed. And what I further learned was all those movies I watched since a kid was this library of cinematic images that I could draw from. So that's why I realized that coloring was the perfect place for me, a person who's a visualist anyway. I'm very visually oriented. I learn visually better than I do reading. I've always been I pick things up better if you just show me visually. So I fell into it, and it was a perfect fit. It fit like a glove. And I had to get better though. I had lots of lessons to learn on the way, and still do. I've been doing it 25 years.
That's amazing again. And you tell a great thing. I want to talk about that a few more. You talk about the usage of power windows, and there is like we could talk hours about that, but I know tons of colleagues that use quite massive, quantity of power windows sometimes, and I know some colors that don't want to touch cinematography. But for me, coming from cinematography, I'm quite on the side that you want to read shadows and where things are going, and just help the cinematography a bit. What's your approach right now to the creation of windows, maybe dungeon boarding or things like photography thing? Yeah. What's your approach?
My approach is, and I didn't coin this phrase, and I know other cinematographers have said this phrase, but I don't know where this came from. But I believe that there is beauty in simplicity. I keep it simple. When you overcomplicate things, you can really mess things up. Okay? So, like, for instance, you need to learn all the tools in your color system, but you don't need to always use them. You know when and when not to use tools. I'm always respectful of the cinematographer's file, their image. I am always hoping that the shape is already there when I put it up. And once I put my curve on, I'm hoping it's 80% falling into place. Okay? And I look from east to west across the screen, and I just look for shape. And if it's not there, that's when I will put maybe it's the same light level from east to west. It's about the same, and I want to shape it up. So that's when I'll throw an oval power window, but very subtly. I want to make sure that my windows feel organic, like it was part of the lens. So again, I'm a very delicate approach. I try not to do power windows if I don't have to, but as I usually go through second passes, once I've got the paint on the wall of my first pass, everything's matched. Camera A and B cameras are matched. My technical grading is done, and the grade and the look is basically applied. Then I just watch through it, and then that's where it jumps out at me, where I need a lower third. I need a floor. The floor is too bright. It's taking my eye off of the character. So it's in that second pass is where I kind of feel the need for more flagging where needed. And 9 out of 10 cinematographers would want that anyway, and that's what they probably will tell me in their notes is flag that corner, whatever. So I do it on an as needed basis. And I learned, back years ago, the power window was the biggest tool that was used constantly that cinematographers love. But that was years ago. Now keying has gotten so precise. I love using luminance keys, HSL keys, or your 3D keyer. I love sometimes I love solving the problem with a key. Like they say, that there's a white wall and the sunlight is hitting it. Can you power window that? And I'm like, well, we might feel that on that white wall. So if I just get a luminance key on that and feather it out, I could take it down naturally better than a power window sometimes. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's all to say. My approach is I try to just do it in a simple manner, and only, you only step on the gas when you need to, and then you ease off the gas when it's pretty much already there. You need to know when and when not to apply tools.
I 100% agree on that. And I want to also spend some time talking about this, in my opinion, pretty exciting things such as the depth map on Resolve, even because I think it's another pretty powerful tool. I made an article about that because I think that there might be a correlation between the actual optical, correction or tweak we could do to the image as colorists with the correct lens usage, with that bokeh, with that feel. You obviously use it. Are you using it a bit during?
Well, I have something to admit. I have not. I've been asking my friends, but I have not played with the depth map yet. I have not had a chance, or I haven't had a reason to use it. So you've probably got more experience with that than I have. Yeah, I know what it does, but there's so many new tools in Resolve 18 that I've not at this. In fact, what's funny is I had it on my schedule to, as soon as I got a moment's break, I'm going to play with it. But I fortunately, knock on wood, I've been so busy with work, it's been hard to practice that.
I'm seeing you're literally color grading every single day, a new piece, and
Well, what's crazy is I was averaging 10 movies a year, 10 to 12. And I always thought that was pretty good, 10 to 12 features. Then 2 years ago, I hit like 15, 18. And then last year I hit I did 22 films, but I actually did carry 2 of those movies over into this year. So I guess technically I did 20 movies last year. And it was nuts. And then that's on top of I have a few TV shows I do, and I still do commercials, about 20% commercials, 30% sometimes. So yeah, it's been so busy, there's no time to practice. So that's the only downside of working is no time to practice.
I wanted to ask even because I was like a bit magnified by that. I literally loved playing with it, even for the fact that for the first time we like have an alphabet that it's AI generated. I also thought about this for VFX, even because I remember back even five years ago, you had to obviously make your mat on After Effects or whatever. You have to export the mat with the ProRes 444XQ and then use the mat. And then you have it there implemented with one OFX, and you can carry those data on, work with them, and you have that depth that it's optically really accurate, and it's really great. I would love to hear from you when you have the chance to play.
Have you used it on a job?
Not yet, even because I want to play a bit more to use it on a job. Yeah.
But again, are you using it? Is it primarily to sort of add a little bit of defocus beyond your character? Is that primarily what it does, or is there more tools, more to it than that?
A bit defocus. I also used for changing, the white balance of the background, or also with mainly with the lens blur, or with the I think it was the zoom blur or something, like for creating some weird effect on the background if you want to. And mainly also for the key selection, it's nuts. Is the fact that you can actually select depth map.
You can create a mat if you needed to, right? If you just want to isolate that character or object.
Yeah.
That's what I think is wonderful about it. I would caution about using the defocus just off the top of my head. Sounds like it could look like an Instagram filter really quick. So I guess you got to be delicate with how much you use it, right?
Few points. Mainly, you might have maybe a character and you want to like attack just specific areas of blacks on a specific areas of like focus. That's the cool part. But yeah, it's pretty crazy insane. So just to know on a commercial, I think this is kind of a nonsense thing to ask, but it will make sense for new colorist or someone that is starting right now. How many nodes you apply for? You work on a fixed structure normally, or?
Yes, I do. If you've seen anything online, I talk about it. Mark Wheelage will also talk about my fixed node structure. He also uses one. A lot of the professional colorists have been using fixed node structures for years, only because I think we all sort of came to the same conclusion that it saves time to have something that's pre-built that the cinematographer is going to ask for. I always used to feel bad years ago and this is how it used to be years ago. You go to a shot and the cinematographer would go, "Oh, I want a vignette here." And you would build it from scratch every shot. You'd just add a new node and build it from scratch. And I always felt like I was wasting time building it from scratch. And sure, you could save a node and drag and drop. I just have, I start with a 49 node structure. So it's got parallels in there, and it's got like luminance keys that are already keyed on the highest. It's basically just a starting point for my luminance keys. But again, nothing is active. Vignettes are there roughly for splits, for lower thirds, toppers, vignettes. It's got a red key, it's got a face key ready to sort of grab skin tone. And I just find it so quick to when they're like it's fluent, it's smooth when the cinematographer or the director's saying, "Oh, take the red out of that skin." You've already got something ready to go. You know where it's at. You can also, that's another thing, knowing that your nodes are always in the same place. I don't get 14 days on a movie. I'm getting 5 to 8 if I'm lucky. Sometimes we got to beg and get 8 on the bigger ones. But it's not a lot of time. So my workflows have had to become more streamlined the last few years. So it's nice to know that, okay, my skin key is always in that number 5. And then if you need to do a change throughout a scene, you can ripple that change very quickly. So it's just it's a fluent workflow to have your nodes built already, and you just go to those things. And then there's empty nodes in there for new things because new things always come up. So I leave enough empty ones within that structure to try new things.
And you mainly use Resolve or?
I do. Years ago, I was on about 4 boxes, maybe 5. I think it was 4. It was like Nucoda, Pablo, Quantel Pablo, Luster. Did a few movies and commercials on that. And so that was hard to keep in my head as a freelance colorist. I would literally bounce around. I'd be working on Nucoda tomorrow. And then 2 days later, I'm on Luster, which I'd have to always wrap my brain around each system again. Like, where do they keep their power windows? They all name things differently. So that was hard as a freelancer back then. And I was so grateful when Resolve became free. Everybody had it. The post houses started, they knew that I was better on Resolve. I started when it was not Resolve. Of course, I started years ago when it was just, DaVinci 2K. And it was owned by a different company, and it was nice when I started going to post houses and they'd say, Mark, we have Nucoda or Resolve. Which one would you like? And I just started saying Resolve. And then now a lot of those systems have gone away. There's only pretty much it's Baselight and Resolve now. I know people do use Nucoda as well, so I don't mean to diss any of the Nucoda users. I just don't see it in my circles. I don't see Nucoda as much anymore. But Nucoda's great. I colored It Follows on that, and I colored a movie called Beyond Skyline on that system. It's a great system. But I'm just more comfortable. I know Resolve all the way to the ground. With those other systems, there was always an assistant. They had to do with the editorial for me, which I appreciate anyway. My time is better spent on color, but it's nice for me to know the editorial and how to work things. It's better to know the system deep. And so, yeah, Resolve, I know it deep. And that's why I feel most comfortable on Resolve.
Great. And about Resolve itself, I have a question. And I'm seeing that you are a great lover of the Stream Deck and the Elgato company. Even because when I do my masterclasses, I always show the pictures of your workstation, and I tell them, see, you don't need the advanced panel. You just need the mini panel and few Stream Deck if needed. And we want to talk also about that because I feel the fact that I don't need the advanced panel actually, even if same thing. I need to stay in really tight schedule and work really fast. But 2 Stream Decks, mini panel, enough for me. I think that you have 3.
I only have 3. I recently got another one, bigger one. But the big ones, I just wanted more landscape. But yeah, you are absolutely correct. Here's the thing, and I know I've got a couple of colors friends that like to differ on this opinion. They feel that you need the advanced panel, and that's fine for them. I work on the advanced panel on some of the bigger post houses I get called to work at, but it's not as much anymore. I do a lot more work out of my own company. But the advanced panel is fine, but even back then when I was working on the advanced panel, I still found that there was landscape that I didn't use. I felt like it's all this landscape, but I only use such a small portion of it. But again, it's a great panel. It's just not cost effective for a lot of us. And I am a small business too. And for me, I keep thinking $30,000, I've got to make that up somehow in my work to make that money up. So for me, the mini panel is very serviceable. And then, like you said, you just put the buttons on that you need. And now I feel like I've got more buttons on this than the advanced panel offers. I've got more worked buttons that I use constantly. So Stream Deck has been a godsend to have. Love the Stream Deck.
And which profile you use? You have customized them or?
I'm using that is it called Sideshow Effects?
Yeah, Sideshow, it's the same one.
Yeah, Sideshow is great. And I just altered some of those to be what I need. I really need to get into the Keyboard Maestro, and I know Joey Deanna has got it really wonderfully built. He uses Keyboard Maestro as well, so he's doing even more complicated things than I'm doing. I never had time to figure that out, so it's doing a lot of just basic things, but it works for me the way I've got it built.
It's great, even because people think that you have to spend those 30K, on the advanced panel. And in my opinion, everything needed, it's there. It just help you move faster, and do things quickly, but at the same time.
Years ago too, I know it used to be an aesthetic thing where they would say, well, the client needs to see that like it's such an impressive looking panel. It looks like you're on the Starship Enterprise. But I think clients have gotten more savvy and more smart about what we do. They know Resolve a little bit because they have it probably on their desktops to play around with. I just don't think that they're as impressed. My feeling is they're not as impressed anymore with the aesthetic, but I could be wrong. My clients don't care about my panel. They care about me. Like, am I in a good headspace? How am I feeling? Let's make this. They're worried about the artist, not the gear. So
Yeah.
Yeah, even because you want the client like to see at the image and not whatever you will be tweaking, even if it's a nerd or if he knows everything. Yeah, for sure.
it's the samurai, not the sword. Again, all these systems are great. I learned Baselight for Hugo, but I didn't color Hugo. I was working for James Cameron at the time. His company called Cameron Pace. It was like 2000, end of 2011, 2012, and they wanted me to learn how to do stereo correction. Match the left eye and right eye and make them, optically change them. So we learned Baselight in about 5.5 hours, a bunch of us over there, just to do that movie. And then we were off and running for 3 weeks, doing stereo correction on Hugo. It was a great experience. I loved learning all those tools. So, but it's not about the tools are great. But again, I still think the artist is the important thing.
Yeah, that's the thing we are repeating over and over, on this podcast, and I'm really glad to hear that from you too. And because you talk a bit about it, just talk about your experience with It Follows. That I think it's one of the of the movies that I think you are really proud of the results. I'm really amazed anytime I watch it. So what was the experience and the overall situation on It Follows?
Seen it a couple times. That's good.
Oh yeah.
What's funny is I recently watched it again, like late last year, and I'd forgotten what a good movie it was because I don't even know if at the time I saw it with the final audio. I think I just knew the images. But what's funny is I learned a big lesson that year. That was 2014, and I was working on a movie for Disney DreamWorks called Need for Speed at the time at a
Oh
company
yeah.
called Bandito Brothers out here in Culver City. And Need for Speed was Aaron Paul's first movie that he was doing from Breaking Bad. He went from Breaking Bad to Need for Speed. And this was about a $90 million movie. And Steven Spielberg was an executive producer. He visited my color room the first day, and I was in heaven. That was so cool. Because I'm in my head, I'm going, you're the person that I got in this industry for. Just like a lot of us can say that. Um, and I thought this was the movie it's a fine movie. I love this movie. I think it's a fun watch. And it's the movie I thought people were going to be talking about forever. And I was so wrong because 3 months later, I got put on this little $800,000 movie called It Follows. And I'm a big horror fan, but as I'm coloring, I'm going, I don't know if it's scary enough. And I didn't think people were going to like it. So it showed how wrong I was. And what was cool about this movie is the director and cinematographer, David Robert Mitchell, the director, and then Michael Goulakis, the cinematographer, they approached me. We did it at a company called Tunnel Post in Santa Monica, and they had been given a choice of some freelance colorists. They liked my work, and probably because I'd done Capote or something, I think they were impressed with that. So they came up to me and said, "Mark, we want to talk to you about the look of this movie before we shoot it." It hadn't been shot yet, so we just started talking, and the director just gave me one directive. He said, "I want it to look like Technicolor but modern."
What does it
What
mean?
do you do with that? What is that? What does that exactly mean? I'm like, first of all, there's several flavors of Technicolor. There's 30s Technicolor. There's 40s. It evolved. 40s and 50s
Evolving, yeah.
Technicolor looks different than 30s Technicolor. So I just stewed on that in my brain, and then I asked them to send me, shot on the Airy, And I said, send me clips from day one and let me start playing with it on Resolve. And I just started, I called some of my other colorist friends. What are your, I just need at least a starting point of Technicolor. Called some of my friends. And at the time, a lot of my friends didn't want to give up their secret sauce for how they did a Technicolor look. So I just read some material online and I devised what I felt was a pretty nice looking Technicolor starting point, which we ended up throwing out because it was on Resolve anyway, and I had to do this movie on Dakota. But I just duplicated it on Dakota, and on day one, I gave them what I felt was a Technicolor look, and then the director goes, that's great, but it's too much. Pull it back. And once I just started twisting the knobs and pulled back on it a little bit on that look, because it was a little too heavy, he goes, stop, that's it. That's the movie. That's the look of the movie. And it was a scene where she's in the wheelchair in her underwear in that garage. And that's the shot that we started like designing the look on. And then we were off and running, and that was like a 14-day color grade. And I got to be really creative. With lots of subtle, textures and tones I got to put in the black levels and in the highlights. And we got to do delicate color work in it, which I'm really happy with. And to this day, I still get calls from people that say, I need the guy that colored It Follows, or, I still get work from it today. And I thought that I would long be done with, being able to ride on the coattails of It Follows, but it's still, I got hired because on The Act for Hulu, and that's one of their bigger shows that they had at the time in 2019. And the showrunner and DP said, we wanted you because we were lighting some of the scenes like It Follows, and we wanted you. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's great. And the whole process behind, the look, it's kind of insane to think, because how can define, like an horror grade or a horror look? There are so many movies shot with different stocks back in the days, and again now that looks really different. Just think about Midsummer, just to take one. Yeah, and in your opinion, as you are a horror movie lover, what do you think about the norm? I won't call it normal, but what might be the kind of standard approach to a horror movie? Even because people think that an horror movie might have a really dark cinematography, but in the end, it's not like that. What's your like starting approach with no like requests?
Well, what's funny is as we all know, a lot of horror cinema in the last 10, 15 years tends to lean green. Like I did the remaster work of The Ring before I left Company 3. At least I got it started. I think someone finished it for me. But yeah, I love The Ring, and I think The Ring kind of started that whole green teal kind of thing and look of horror movies. And I used to, every time I tried to veer away from green, like or cyan in a horror movie, I found that nothing works except that, because it's weird. Everything looks too normal. And remember, color is such a subconscious thing in our minds. When we see sunniness or normal skin tone, we are comforted that things are okay. The sun's out, everything's okay. But as soon as someone walks in a hallway and we've taken the warmth out of the light and we've made it cyan, I think that communicates something's off balance. Something is not right, because those are not normal colors we see in our world. Those unless you're in a dingy fluorescent lighted room, it's not going to look yellow green unless under those conditions. So I think it puts us off balance, and that's why it works so well in horror films. But again, you got to know when and when not to use that look. You don't want to overdo it. You got to let us see healthy skin, everyone. I think it's good to kind of ebb and flow it. Let us see good, healthy skin tone for scenes that it doesn't require that look. But then again, of course, when they're searching down that dark hallway and something is about to happen, that's a perfect time for that look, So that's sort of the way I approach it.
Yeah, and we are always obviously helping cinematography because we need to help that. Yeah.
Some cinematographers, I think they're a little nervous about handing their baby over to us, because they might have to go on to another job and they might not be able to quote unquote hold our hand, which a colorist never needs a cinematographer to hold their hand while they're grading. But some of them get worried that, oh man, I'm going to come back in 3 months and find out that the director and the colorist did something different. So I just want them to know, as long as you communicate, and as long as the director is communicative with the cinematographer about if he or she changes something that wasn't the cinematographer's plan. I always say, director, please tell the cinematographer we're kind of going a little off the map than what the DP asked, because I don't want them upset. So it's a scary thing for a cinematographer to let their project go to a colorist, but just know that we are an extension of cinematography. We're here to help, and as long as the communication is open, I think that's what we'll do.
And about the fact that you're working on so many pieces, do you have like any, I won't call them like productivity hacks, but do you have any like scheduled working routines, or while working on something, like, I don't know, do you work on like specific hours during the day, or?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I learned to there. I sometimes have 2 or 3 features I'm working on simultaneously during a week, unsupervised. Okay, my regular regimen or schedule is I will do an in-person look set for about 3 to 4 hours. I've learned that you don't need an 8-hour day to set looks unless there's just so many scenes and different looks to cover. But usually 3 to 4 hours. That way you kind of still have energy to do more. You can do more some of the harder heavy lifting after the clients leave. But usually 3 to 4 hours is enough to get a hero still in every main area. And then I am off on my own for the next several days. And I work the best by myself, where I can get sort of one with material. I know that sounds very zen, but it's kind of true. You got your music on, you're in your dark cave, and you're just really getting into the vibe of what you need to do. For me, vibes are very, very important. What music I'm playing, I always choose a soundtrack that goes with the movie or commercial or whatever I'm doing, just to make sure I'm in that zone. And then there's lots of decisions to make especially when there's the first pass, as you know, is a technical grade. You got to fix. There's movies where they're like, oh, the B camera's a little off from the A. And so once you find that solution, then you just go back through and make sure everything matches with the look that you've created with your creative grade. So there's just lots to do. So what I do is I like to have it takes me 2 days, maybe sometimes 2.5. It depends on the movie, to get a watchable movie to show the clients. And now I'm ready for them to give me criticism, to give me constructive notes. So, and usually what I find is even better than to just have them come in physically. I say, watch it on Frame.io first. Let's get the broad stroke notes done first before our final day. Because usually we only get one final day of in-person review. So to make it the most fruitful productive day for a last day's review, have them watch it on Frame.io. That way, they'll give me those big notes that they don't want to be there for anyway. Because what if he tells me that this scene of 38 shots you need to track a power window every time you're in that corner, and maybe the camera's moving. I don't want to waste hours in front of them tracking. There's nothing they can do while I'm tracking and doing that kind of tedious work. So I'd rather do that at home or in my post house before they get there. So get all the big notes done. That way, they come in for their final review, and sometimes we do these reviews in 5 hours or less because it's already there. It's 99% done. It's just small minutia by that time, and it's super fun to just watch your movie and know it's pretty much done because all the notes, the big stuff's taken care of, and they didn't have to sit through that. So it's just small stuff. Oh, take a little more red out of his face, or a little less bright, but they're really easy notes to finish the movie off on that final day.
So we were talking about, getting in the mood and stuff, and I'm seeing, tons of colors that for different commercial jobs that they just have quite of a different scenario, not talking about like having a windows that is meshing lights on their screen, but they're having a bit like an up, scenario. So with a scenario with a bit more lights around and a bit more, so nothing maybe D65, nothing super like tight and precise. do you always grade in the dark, or are you having, different situation where you're like, uncomfortable with having a bit more light in my room, or
I've tried both ways over the years. I bounce back and forth, but I found that I like to have complete darkness only because I'm very sensitive to lights that are off to the side. Like, for instance, when I'm in a theater, there are some theaters I work in that have sconces, light sconces along the walls. And when I'm looking at the theater, I can see those lights along the wall in the corners of my eyes in the peripheral, and I hate that. It draws my eye. It makes me think about them, and I want to think about the main screen. So that's just my thing. So I usually turn those sconces down. We have lights that are on the stairs leading up the theater I work in Hollywood. I take the red and I take those down on the slider as minimal. I want the people to see the steps, but it's as low as you can go because sometimes you even get a light reflection of red on the screen. So I like it dark. I have tried it where I've lifted some lights. I know that that's a theory of, oh well, people aren't going to be watching this movie, with their lights off. It's going to be in a living room, and there'll be some practicals. And I've tried that, and there's nothing wrong with it. As long as it's at a low level and it's behind me, I don't mind. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. For me, I just want to make sure I'm seeing the black levels as true as I can. I don't want to be influenced by anything else. So for me, when the room is dark and I've got my backlight, my 6500 backlight against that 18% gray wall. And to me, I can judge black levels really well with that. So for me, black levels are very important. So to nail those, so that's how I like to work.
yeah, I asked this because I don't remember if it was Dedo Valentic or maybe Warren Eagle, but someone said that maybe if you are grading like a commercial that it's going to be projected at noon, and it's going to be seen like in a kitchen from a mother while cooking, it might be good to grading in a similar situation because of the overall situation, but obviously being aware of light cast and all those
It's
things.
a very reasonable, you know, attitude to have. That's very reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. I have few more questions. One is again, it's about tools. We said that tools are not indispensable, but I want to know if you have like, or if you think that there are some underrated tool that you like feel indispensable.
Like I love the 3D keyer. I've loved that for many years since Resolve put the 3D keyer in. I've it's one of my favorite tools. Um,
Using a lock keys or qualifier or
yeah. Like for instance, there are people that love to use hue versus sat to pull skin tone down. It's weird how I just never felt comfortable with that tool. Like I use it and I always feel like I don't have as much control with it. But again, it could be just user error. Maybe it's the way I'm finding that skin tone with my mouse. I don't know. It's how it is. You got to use whatever works for you. For me, it's easy to draw and isolate that skin. Knock off if the wall is too close to it, to the skin tone, I can quickly deselect that. I find I can get skin really good with a 3D keyer and get a perfect matte without having to power window them and build a matte. And that's a quicker way of grabbing skin tone for me. Another thing I love is my offset. I think I posted about this a few weeks ago. That offset is one of my favorite tools for quickly. Like I used to spend time always to when I go to a shot that's it's clearly too blue. Okay, I'll grab my RGB, I'll grab my, my red, pull red down, or subtract blue, add green. I would do 3 knobs in different ways, or I would do it with my trackballs. But I found the offset is so much quicker to just use that ball to just sort of basically put it there, right? Now, sometimes it messes your blacks up. Sometimes I've noticed, it put a little bit more too blue in my blacks. But I'll just compensate and quickly with my black trackball. I will fix that. But I just find it's a quick way to fix a shot that's way off from the other shots temperature wise. And I just love that tool.
Yeah, you know about that. It felt kind of strange to me because it's because I'm a freshman in this field, but for me it was always about like making the like overall adjustments just with the offset wheel. It was like or with the global right now, even because it's even more accurate if you got raw files. And I was always like pressing next clip and having one end on the offset and just balancing, exposure it's quite, it's quite strange, hearing this for you, because I've been thinking this during this day, and I was like, it's too simple. It's too simple. There might be something else. Yeah, the thing of obviously the blacks and also whites, you'll have to compensate, but that's great to hear from you. And to wrap up the episode, I just have a few more questions, and these are 3 books to recommend and 3 movies to recommend to our audience, not on the tech side but on the human side. What are like 3 movies and books that for you means a lot and might uh making us not just better professional but also human being?
But yeah, I mean, books. I mean, if we're talking color books, I mean, you can always read. Alex Van Herkman's got a great book on color that everyone's probably read. Um, and movies, my gosh, your question was about like 3 movies I'd recommend seeing. Uh,
On whatever side, technical, human.
oh well, jeez. I mean, I just the movies that I had Star Wars. I think you see that's Nightmare on Elm Street back there, but I used to have Star Wars there. Um, Jaws. I have Jaws over here. You probably can't see it. Jaws is behind me. Movie poster. Raiders of the Lost Arks to the right, and then I had Star Wars.
Classics.
Those are the 3 movies that I always felt. Those are the movies that made such an impact on me. And I was a little young for Jaws at the time. I was pretty young, so I didn't really get to appreciate Jaws until many years later when it was on VHS. But when you get to see the CinemaScope, the version, the widescreen version, the framing that Spielberg uses and the way he moves that camera along the beach on some of the shots, the way the characters move in and around, the blocking of the characters is fantastic. So I would recommend those 3 to start with on your journey in cinema, and yeah, and go from there. But there's too many influences. We could get into Back to the Future. We could get into uh, Cinema Paradiso. I love Cinema Paradiso. It's one of my favorite films because that's about the love of cinema. So
Yeah, about Cinema Paradiso, I think it's in my top 5. But yeah, I think you mentioned tons of music from the 80s and 90s that are like great classics. And yeah, even for me, I'll be like 30 years old this year, but I'm like my heart is there on the 80s and 90s, and yeah, we could mention like trillions of movies.
yeah, not to say I love current movies as well. We're just these are movies that sort of just had an impact on me. But no, there's so many great current movies being shot and done, so it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
You are just to close up. You're working on something great that is coming out. You want to send us somewhere right now?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've got a few movies I'm excited about. That one is running right now. I think it just finished this week at South by Southwest, which is one of our pretty bigger, film festivals. It's called Scrambled. It's already been bought by Lionsgate. They're not. It's not like they're looking for a distributor. It's been bought, and it's a Lionsgate movie. But you're going to hear about this movie. It's a very smart comedy drama, written and directed and starring Leah McKendrick. And she was in the movie Bad Moms, but you're going to hear more of this woman. She's been writing, I guess she's set to write the Grease prequel, the musical. Oh, yeah. She's a very prolific writer. She's a great writer. And this movie is smart, funny. The editing and the pacing is beautiful. So now I'm very proud of that. That's coming out. There's another movie that's coming out tomorrow's March 17th. Tomorrow it opens in theaters. It's called Supercell. And it's kind of like Twister. If you remember the movie Twister, it's a storm chaser movie, and it was Anne Heche's last movie. You familiar with Anne Heche, who passed away recently, unfortunately? I believe it's her last movie, or one of the last couple of movies. But it is a highly ambitious independent film, but when you see the work and love that the director and the cinematographer and I put into it, and everybody else that put into it, it looks like it could have been a multi-million-dollar from Warner Brothers. There's just a lot. It's sort of an homage to early Spielberg work. The camera moves. The first 20 minutes you're gonna go, oh, that's an homage to Close Encounters. That's an homage to Spielberg's Duel. That's an homage to E.T. But he is it's a love letter to the cinematic style of Spielberg. And he did the best he could with the short amount of time that they had to make that movie. But it had over 420 or so created visual effects to create the world of the storm in and around the characters. And so it was quite a feat to try to tie it all together, because I spoke with Jason just about this the other day, because he's a fan of the trailer the trailer's running. There's 2 of them now, if you check them out. But we had to basically make the movie fit the effects. We had to work backwards, because the effects we found looked best at a certain exposure level. So once we'd find the right exposure level for the effects, then we backtrack backwards to say, okay, well, the scenes leading up need to be sort of at that level. They can't be too bright or can't be too under. And then the movie gets steadily dark as it goes along. So that was another hard thing to keep track of. I'd have to keep, the director himself, Jamie Winterstern, was a storm chaser himself. So he spent time in the middle of storms. So he would tell me, Mark, at this point, the storm is very yellow. And he would tell me the colors of the storm.
He knows it.
Yeah, I didn't know. I've never been in a storm. So he would have to tell me, or Mark, it's way darker by this point. He would have to guide me as to, well, where are we at with exposure at the storm level now? And he'd be like, oh, we're much darker. We need to be darker. And I get worried. I'm like, and I can't see the actor's face almost. He says, it's okay. He's caught he's in the middle of the storm with all this debris and atmosphere. So it was a very interesting challenge to work on that film, and I'm excited about it.
So, okay, thank you, Mark, for being here. Really appreciate that. We appreciate your time. And you can find Mark on every social platform or mtocolor.com. And I'm sure that our audience will love this chat. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun talking with you today. Cheers.
プラズマバースポッドキャスト